DC, good morning. Welcome into the Blitz. How you doing?
Oh, doing great, Martin. How are you this morning?
I'm doing well. We got several things to get to today. Of course, a lot of people want to talk about Bama hoops and, of course, the coaching staff. And we're just around the corner from spring practice. So a lot of stuff going on. But let's go ahead and get Gregory in. Gregory has a call for you, so I'll go ahead and get that up first. Gregory, you're in with DC. What's your question?
Hey, Roll Tide, y'all. Roll Tide, DC, and Martin.
Roll Tide.
My question is, do you think Nick Saban taking a gamble because the schedule we got without no depth and with the coaching staff, trying to break them in, especially with that defense
coordinator.
Coordinator. He made over the defense. From last season. What's his name?
Pete Golding.
Oh, Pete Golding.
Yeah, Pete Golding. Yes. What you think about that?
No, I don't. Gregory, I don't necessarily see it as a gamble. I think I've said it all last year that Coach Saban sees something in Pete Golding that he really likes. I think he sees a little bit of himself in Pete Golding, and I think it was just in his mind. To say that Coach Saban looks at his schedule and thinks it's not a great schedule for us to keep take a gamble. I don't think that sits within his DNA. I think he's looking to get the best person in the best position. And I really believe he feels like promoting from within and using and Pete Golding, he couldn't get anybody any better that he had more confidence in out there to come in. And I think that's why he went with Pete Golding.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that they're going to open up some concern that how we played on defense?
In my estimation, I don't think so. It's simply because I think last year one of the problems we had on defense was the two-headed monster, so to speak, having two people that were in charge of the defense. Really, two people, one that was calling plays, the other one that was calling plays mid-season, and still having young people who were looking to different people. I think this year you have an associate defensive coordinator, but I think he knows his role coming in is to help the young guy. Charles Kelly's going to come with a lot of experience. I think he's going to help the young guy in Pete Golding. So it won't be a two-headed monster. It'll be somebody with a support role, and I think it'll be better for him this year.
Okay, I got another question for the SEC. We got LSU, we got Auburn, we got I forgot them other team. The Hogs, whatever the name is. What you think about our schedule facing them with their draft this season?
With their
with their recruit.
All right. Thanks, Gregory. Go ahead, DC.
Well, I think if the question is, how we do against those teams, I think we'll be fine. I just don't. I think it's too early to tell exactly. We see a little bit more about spring practice and getting into the summer workouts and see who makes it through without any injuries. But if we stay injury free and we develop at the pace I think we will, I think we'll be fine against them.
All right. That was Gregory with a couple questions for DC. DC, we'll continue on, kind of hit a couple of things I wanted to talk to you about. First of all, looking at the coaching staff, finally official. I was kind of hoping that they would kind of do on the defensive side what they did to the offensive side of the ball. I mentioned in the first quarter, I would love to have seen Pete Golding, the young defensive coordinator that I agree with you. I think Saban sees a lot of himself and a lot of Kirby in Pete Golding. But I was not impressed with him as a position coach last year and wasn't overwhelmed by him if he called the plays down the stretch. But Nick Saban knows more than I did. And so I was kind of hoping, okay, they're going to bring in an extra coach on the defensive side of the ball and make him just like they did Loxley. Just coordinate the defense, someone else coach the position. So I have a huge concern with his ability to be the DC and develop the talent we need at inside linebackers. Do you share that or disagree, or what are your thoughts there?
We'll have just a little different spin on it. I think, of course, of all, I think Coach Saban knows what he's doing. He knows he's got closer to the situation than I am. But my job is to look at it and analyze it. So I think that what you're suggesting should have happened, could have happened, would have been a great thing if we'd have done that. I think it worked really well last year on the offensive side of the ball with Dan Enos coming in and specifically doing the quarterback. So I see where you're heading with that. But in what he did, I look at it a little different way. I'm wondering by bringing Charles Kelly in, and he gives him a dual role of safeties coach and gives him a role of associate defensive coordinator. I think you bring Charles Kelly in to be that support person for Pete Golding to kind of help him with the whole coordinating effort. And I don't think it'll be a distraction. I think it'll be a help for him in a support role. And then, I know that that Coach Saban has worked with the defensive backs in the past, but I'm wondering if he hasn't decided that his weakest point on this team is his middle linebacker. And since he didn't hire somebody for that job, if we're going to see Coach Saban work with the linebackers a little more this coming year to develop that play caller, which I think is going to be important to have a play caller that can call the plays and still be aggressive on the defense. And so I look at it for him an opportunity to. You got Carl Scott, who he's really impressed with, kept him on staff in the defensive backfield, who I thought did an amazing job with what we had to work with last year. And then you bring in Kelly, who has got some great experience in safeties to continue on building that. We might see Coach Saban spend a little more time with the inside linebackers this year.
That would be an interesting take. I think something has to happen at the inside linebacker, because when I look at this team from a weakness standpoint, the glaring weakness to me is the inside linebacker position, both from inexperience and just who's going to be the guy. And I think that's the part that's new for Bama Nation is we've always had, the guy who was established and the alpha dog that you knew was the next one up. And this year, I'm not sure that we even have – Dylan Moses played well, but is Dylan Moses truly an alpha dog in the line of what we've had, DC? Do you think if we can get a guy that can come along and play, can Dylan Moses handle that role of, play caller and being the alpha dog when it comes to the defense?
Well, I think that's yet to be seen. If you look at last year's games, as any indication, then maybe it doesn't give you a good confidence in that, because if you look at some of the games, Dylan Moses, when Mac Wilson was not in there, Dylan Moses looked to the sidelines a lot. It was late on getting some plays called, was late on getting the coverages called, and actually got us in some wrong positions. So the confidence level there is not great. And that's another reason I think that, you might see Coach Saban concentrate on the inside linebackers a little bit more this year. It's been my belief in Coach Saban, looking at the experience with him, that if the player comes in, he's ready to play, he sees the field and gets to play. I don't think he holds a lot of folks back who's able to play and compete at the highest level. And we've seen that with, all the alpha dogs, if you call them, defensive linebackers come in, they've all got a position to play on special teams or come in spot work. We've seen Rashaan Evans, even the freshman, coming in and rushing the quarterback. We've seen, all the different players. We see Mosley, the different ones come in and play when they were young. We didn't have that this year. Ali Ko is the only one. He played on special teams, very, very spot play at middle linebacker. Jalen Moody, spot play at middle linebacker. But my concern in that is if they were ready to play, I think we would see them playing more, because there was opportunities where Dylan Moses and Matt Wilson were just gassed in the game that they needed help. But I don't think Coach Saban was comfortable taking them off the field, and that concerns me. And I think that's another reason you see him, wanting to. I think he's going to be able to concentrate on the defensive side of the ball and concentrate on middle linebacker. He needs to find somebody to fill those positions.
Speaking with DC Capstone Report, it's not all bad and doom and gloom at the Alabama Crimson Tide on the football side. So we'll continue our conversation and look at some potential strengths and opportunities for Alabama where they can get better this year. And we'll continue that conversation with DC. We also got a couple basketball questions coming in. And I'm going to go ahead and tease the question for you in the basketball world, and we'll get to that later on. But Virgil Williams asks, does the great coaches of these past few years, Calipari, Barnes, etc., do they have the same success at Bama that they've had at their other programs, considering the culture at Bama is so football heavy and the lack of facilities? Is that keeping us from that type of success? Could the other guys come in and do what Avery's not done yet at a consistent level in his first 4 years? We'll save that for a little bit, but we'll talk a little bit more football with DC Capstone Report right here on the Blitz. We were talking a little bit about Bama, and we were talking about my concerns with the coaching staff. But when you look at all of this, when you look at this coaching staff overall, it's just huge. To me, he did – last year was an overcorrection, and that's what we do sometimes when we have a bad year. Nick Saban fell out of the top in recruiting, didn't just fall 1 or 2 spots, but fell out of like the top 5. And I think he went way overboard on the recruiting side for coaches. This year, it seems that he brought some balance back to that, and he has a strong staff of recruiters as well as coaches. But one of the things that I also think is, do you think he did a good job of potentially, you never know what's going to happen, but getting a good mix of guys who will be here more than 1 or 2 seasons, as he only has 3 returning coaches once again?
Yeah, I think when you look at it, you never know at this point what you've got. But, looking at it, the people he's gotten, I think he addressed several concerns. One is he, like you said, he corrected where he had overcorrected. He got us back to a balance between young and more experienced coaches for the recruiting aspect of it. And then I think he brought in a lot of folks, with several people with some NFL experience. I think he got some people to surround the team to give them some more experience. And then he brings in a couple of guys that he knows, familiar with his system in Sal Sunseri. I think that's a big hire there. Someone who's really knowledgeable about Coach Saban's system. And he puts him with the outside linebackers, which I thought was interesting because you got some returning players there that could possibly be just all SEC players, and him, Sunseri, putting his stamp on them, making them aggressive. May lend us to have a little more aggressive pass rush, which I think was lacking in that push on the outside was lacking in that Clemson game. So between him and Baker coming in with the defensive line, I think it's just great hires there that's going to shore up our defense. And I'm really looking forward to see what kind of defense is on the field this year with the potential for all these coaches with the experience and developing these young players that we've gotten. I'm really excited about our defense this year.
Speaking with DC Capstone Report, DC, when you talk about the type of defense we put out there, you talk about in types of quality, but from a stylistic standpoint, do you think, Saban has always dominated defense up until last year for the most part, but he's had a couple different ways of doing that. Early in his career, it was more push and contain, and then along came the dual threat quarterbacks, and then he's went with more pressure. This year, I was kind of like, okay, where are we going? Because he went out to Sopsher, who is more of a Mount Cody style of player, but then he also got guys like Alfano. So do you see us going back to more of that push and contain guys, or do we still be that aggressive guys and occasional, and then when we have the few games, we have the run stopper in Sopsher? So what kind of mix do you see there?
Well, I think he addressed both concerns. I think we're going to be aggressive, push the pocket and try to get the sacks type thing. I think he needed some run stoppers to help in those teams that kind of rely and lean heavily on the run. So I think he addressed both of those concerns, and I kind of think we're going to be that defense that's going to pressure the quarterback, but it's going to be able to stop the run as well, and the defensive anchors that we have on the line. But in LeBron Ray and Mathis and Stephon Lynn and Barrymore, I think you also got some defensive linemen that could be able to rush the quarterback, kind of like Quinn Williams did last year. And honestly, that gave a different dynamic to our defensive line, having a lineman that can kind of along the lines of Jonathan Allen, that can push the quarterback too, as well as your outside linebacker. So I think that's important. Another thing this year, I think our offensive philosophy is going to give a hand to our defense and not leave them on the field as long. So I think we'll kind of control the ball a little more and throw off of let them run, throw up passes. So it'll take a little more time off the clock and help the defense as well.
Let me ask you, DC, you just made me think of a question that hadn't really thought about. If we had our typical back half and linebackers and everybody at stay healthy, could this defense, with the advent of Quentin Williams being such a dangerous pass rusher, if we'd had the equivalent support behind him, could this – I know this is very hypothetical, but could this have been, one of the best defenses Nick Saban ever had? Let me say it this way: if you were to put Quentin Williams back in the 16 defense, how much better would that be if you had that type of pressure in the middle? Same thing on the outside, where we were leading the nation in sacks from the outside linebacker, and then we had to back up at linebacker. I think that's what we missed out on this year.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that. I mean, just think about Jonathan Allen, Quentin Williams, Deron Payne playing on defensive line together. What could we have accomplished with that and happened? And all of them at their top performance.
Yeah.
Wow. Just like you said, that's ifs and buts. That can always get into some hypotheticals that really doesn't play out. But is that what Nick Saban went out and did, though, potentially? Yeah. As I look at the recruiting class, you bring it up, is that kind of what he did, though? I think that's what he did. He went out and got that. He went out and got that. And plus, he already knows what he has. And I think he's very impressed with Barrymore, Stephon Wynn. I think those guys are going to really come in and show some more depth on the defensive line. I believe, as I keep going back to it, but I believe he knows his weakest point on this team is middle linebacker. And I think he's going to work in the offseason to shore that position up somehow, whether it's moving people or converting players or developing somebody that's there that we haven't seen, like a Quentin Williams come on the scene early in spring practice. All right, DC, we do a good job of having both some basketball and football listeners out there. Hopefully we can even expand potentially to some of the other sports, but it's mostly a football, basketball show. And Virgil Williams asked a question earlier about this basketball program. It's a lot of conversation out there starting to swirl around about Avery Johnson and his tenure and replacing him and all that. And I have some concerns. I don't have a problem with the conversation. I just have some concerns. That's people's right and prerogative. But I think if you don't have a game plan, it can hurt you more than it helps you. But Virgil Williams asking a question, kind of hypothetical question. When it comes to Alabama basketball, is part of what's missing the facilities and the culture around here? And his question was, if you take some of the big names, and he named a couple guys, but any of the big names coaches, if they came to Alabama with the current situation, the current facilities, the current atmosphere, would they be able to recruit and win at the level they're currently winning at, like at the Kentuckys and of the world? Well, I don't think recruiting at Alabama is ever going to be the same as recruiting at Kentucky or Memphis or somewhere like that. I think we're more on the line of maybe Tennessee, Ole Miss, that type of thing, where we've seen some coaches go into there and have some immediate success. I've heard all the rumors. I'm basketball season ticket holder, so I go to all the games. I know what's going on with our basketball program. I am not as down on the program as a lot of folks are, because I see some potential there that I haven't seen in quite some time. I remember seeing Newton, Wimp Sanderson when they were here, and I know how great coaches they were. It's hard to get back to the same level of intensity that a Whip Sanderson brings to your program. And at that time, he was recruiting, and we were the bell cow and living life at large in the SEC outside of Kentucky. Not many people competing, and then it came to a point where Florida came up, and then other teams. I think everybody around us in the SEC has gotten so much better at their play and at their recruiting that it's hurt Alabama a little bit in state. We haven't been able to get the best players in the state, and we haven't been able to recruit best players outside. It's hard for Alabama to recruit a big man that can come in and dominate. We haven't had that in quite some time. We had that a lot under Coach Sanderson. We got most of his players. I believe that Coach Johnson has done the best job since Coach Sanderson of getting the best out of his players and putting the best in recruiting. Since no one had recruited a number one player like Colin Sexton before Johnson. I think Johnson's NBA prowess, his NBA connections have been really good about getting recruits. So I think we're just one or two number one recruits away from having a great team under Avery Johnson that can make us, move us into a different level. So I'm not as down on him as some people are. We live in what I call a microwave society. You want it right now. I think 4, 5, 6 years is still not too much to ask for a coach to turn the team around the way Alabama was. If you look out there, these other teams that are having success, they've built on it for quite some time. Kentucky has a legacy of recruiting, and you can recruit these 5-star players that are one and done and win you some championships and win you some big games. So, I think Alabama's not there. We have to build on. It takes years, not months, to build a program.
And I say, as great as Kentucky is, how many championships has Calipari won? One, I think, at Kentucky. I mean, everybody talks about him like he's this great coach. I mean, the guy has the year in and year out. The guy has of starters, guys 1 year removed from starting in the NBA for the most part. He has 2 to 3 guys every year on his team. He's won 1 championship. So we'll talk about that and more as we finish up the fourth quarter right here with DC Capstone Report on the Blitz on Tide 102.9 and 100.9. Hey, we got I have like the 4 C's for you, DC, when it comes to Bama. A lot of people talking about what's going on there, need to get rid of the coach. My concern is you're in one of the biggest recruiting battles you've ever been in for Wofford out of Mountain Brook, and all of this conversation is only hurting the program. Whether Avery stays or goes. And even one of our interns, James intern, said we may come down to a mutual parting of ways. Not going to help the program. I'm telling you, DC, I'm not sure what Bama fans expect. I'm not sure what the expectations should be. Should the expectations be, one, that we're making it to Sweet 16s, Elite 8s, or at year 4, what did we expect? When Avery took over the program, we had not beat a top 25 team in like 20-something games. So at this point, are we where you would have expected Avery to be?
Yeah, I'm a realistic Alabama basketball fan. I mean, I followed Alabama basketball since I was young. I'm realistic about it. I thought last year should have been in the tournament, and we were. I thought we competed well. I think this year we should be in the tournament. I mean, even with the last 2 blowout losses, I think several other places have it still projected if we win most of our games going down the stretch, still be in the tournament. I think Alabama should be in the tournament every year and competing for the Sweet 16. I think there are some years as we grow that we could possibly get into the Elite 8. Alabama's never gone further than that. So, I don't know what the Alabama fans expect, except, I think a lot of Alabama fans are spoiled with what our football program has done. But our football program has always been ahead of our basketball program here, so it's not like a big surprise to that. And I didn't answer your question earlier, and I want to go back to that about facilities and all that sort of thing. My point of all that is, you play basketball on the same court, no matter what the facilities look like. I know it's about recruiting issue, but once you get on the court, you ought to be able to compete on wherever you're playing. And so I don't know that has a deal in the losing or winning of the games. But I think Alabama's problem is we use that as a crutch. The players even, it filters down into the players. We don't have the best players. We don't have the best facilities. We don't have the best recruiting. We have a more football school. that even filters down to the players. So when they play, I think it affects them that way negatively than the fact of us not having the facility. So I think that is a factor.
All right, I got 4 C's for you: consistency, commitment, conditioning, and you can put strength in there, and coaching. Let's kind of go through those and give a grade of where you think Alabama is. When it comes to coaching, what grade would you give Avery and his staff? And that's both coaching and development. You can break those two out if you need to.
Well, I think they've done a good job of coaching. I think Alabama coached well last year with the way they coached with Sexton and on the team. I think they've coached well this year. I think I'd give them a B. I think it's a good coaching job. I think him and Pelfrey do a great job of getting the most out of the players they have, and setting us up in schemes and plays. I don't think that something that they've has a problem in the coaching part of it. I think the problem lies in other areas.
DC, how much of it is, and we may have to continue this conversation, but how much of what's happening on the basketball court is very similar to what happened to Alabama in football this year? Your head coach is having a coach style that's not his style. Avery Johnson is a defensive coach. We've been a run and gun. We've only lost, I think, 3 games this year when we scored 70. We've not won a single game when we've not got to that 70-plus mark, which means we're not playing great defense, and that's what he was known for. How hard is that as a coach?
I think it's difficult. I mean, I listened to Coach Johnson talk to all of the senior season ticket holders at the beginning of the year, and he said we're going to have a little different style of team this year, and he even admitted the one that I'm not as familiar coaching because we're going to rely a lot more on our offense. We're still going to play defense, but we're going to have to rely a lot more on our offense, and I think that was a concern going in. It was a concern for me, and I think we've seen that translate to the court.
Is it possible that the strength and conditioning, because Simeon sits at home and he talks about this often, Simeon, my 10th grader, he says, Dad, why do all the other basketball players just look more physically prepared to play than we do? They're bigger, they seem faster and stronger than our players. Is that possibly part of what happens with this team? Because for the 4th consecutive year, it looks like Alabama is fatiguing and getting weaker down the stretch and playing less consistent down the stretch versus getting better and stronger.
Well, I think it has to do with what you're training them for. I don't know that the problem lies in the trainer, but it may be in the philosophy is what you're training them for. And I think what we've trained them for here is speed, quickness, burst in the offense. And I think that he does that with a team by committee and a 10-person rotation to try to keep them fresh that way. So I think the emphasis on it is to play burst of activity and not longevity. I think we've seen that kind of the way they are trained hurt us in some points when we need that strong bruiser type mentality. We don't have it down the stretch because it's so fatigued.
About 30 seconds, and I know this won't be much time, but consistency seems to be the thing that plagues this team the most. If they play at their highest level consistently, they can play with anyone, but they seem to have too many moments where they just don't reach that potential.
Yeah, consistency, I think, and commitment to the problem. That's to the players. Commitment to the players and the consistency is the problem on this team. And that comes from players, and it starts in recruiting a long time ago and developing players. And I think that is where we're lacking a little bit. And I think if we can get that turned around, then Alabama, wins 2 or 3 more games this year than they did.
All right. Commitment and consistency, the biggest challenge. DC, tell us real quick where our listeners can find your podcast.
Well, you can find us at dccapstoneport.com. We'll have the podcast on Thursday of this week. So you can check us out on Thursday there at dccapstoneport.com. You can follow me on Twitter at DavidCott50. @DavidCott.
That's David Cott 50. David Cott 50. Thanks, DC. We'll catch up with you next week.
Thanks, Martin. We'll see you next week and roll time.